I'm Matthew Kerbis, the subscription attorney, and this is Law Subscribed, your dedicated source for all things subscriptions and the law. Thank you to my sponsors. See links to them in the show notes. Everything discussed is only for educational and entertainment purposes. Enjoy the show. For the 100th episode, we have the perfect guest, since he helped coin the term the subscription economy, author of the book Subscribed, CEO of Zuora, with a new concept called total monetization. Tien, welcome to Law Subscribed.
Thanks, Matthew. Good to be here.
Well, just in case my listeners haven't read or listened to Subscribed yet, you give a good description of your background there. But if you just want to go ahead and give us an overview of where you came from, why you started Zuora.
Yeah. So I've been part of this whole subscription space, especially with technology companies, for probably coming on a better part of, over 20 years, starting with Salesforce. Salesforce is probably known as the company that invented this recurring revenue subscription model for software. And now we call it software as a service. We call it cloud computing. And Salesforce is a big spearheader of that concept. About 10 years into the journey at Salesforce, I was doing great. It was fantastic. It was really enjoyed working with, Mark Benioff there, the founder. But we said, look, could this subscription model be limited to just software, right? Because we believe that software industry is going in that direction. Could any industry, including, the legal industry, go in that direction. And so we said, we do believe it could. And we created a company, it's called Zuora, and we have a set of technologies that help all sorts of companies move to subscription business models. Certainly companies like a Salesforce, like a Zoom that we're using right now, but all the way to like General Motors and Caterpillar and the New York Times and Luxottica with their eyeglass stores. And that's been a great success. But over the years, what we would hear from, customers is, tell us more about the model. We get the technology, but tell us like what it takes to shift the model. And so in 2018, we put together this book called Subscribe that really, distills down all the conversations and all the lessons that we had with this diverse set of customers across multiple industries. And we become now the leading proponent of this thing called the subscription economy. And it's certainly one of the topics that I enjoy talking about quite a bit.
Yeah, and if you could believe it, there's at least 100 episodes worth of conversations about it just in the legal profession.
Really? Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, isn't that something? So, well, I'm sure the attorneys that you've used, speaking of having it for the legal, it could be applied in the legal profession. I'm sure your attorneys are amazing. And this is to say nothing of their quality or their caliber. But I'm sure you've got experience dealing with billable hours from outside counsel and other law firms. So in light of you being this thought leader in the subscription economy and the subscription space, what has it been like for you as the CEO of a company having to deal with service providers that are not leveraging the incredible model?
Well, look, I mean, it's, this dynamic with the billable hours, right? Certainly, this, it sets up a weird tension sometimes between the customer and the service provider, right? And so you're basically asking the customer to say, hey, let me track how much of the services I'm using. And it creates this desire not to use the service, right? Every time, I call my accountant, my lawyer up, right? It's like, oh gosh, you're like I could just feel the clock ticking and the money just flowing out of my ATM machine. And that's just a bizarre dynamic. And so, we had an accountant that happened to be Deloitte down in Australia that we worked with years and years ago. And they tried to change the dynamic. They basically said when it's just on a per hour basis, we're not necessarily the lowest cost, right, from an hour basis. And so we're encouraging our customers to find low-cost providers. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to say, look, we will be an accountant, tax, and bookkeeping service, and you simply pay us a monthly fee. And for that monthly fee, we'll do all the basics that you need to do month in and month out. And then, for any add-on additional expertise, right, like tax advice or estate planning advice or restructuring your company, that's going to be a project. That's going to be a project we price out on a per hour basis. But we don't want you to have to think about, right, all the hours that we're doing on a day-to-day basis. And so I forget, they charge like $5,000 or $10,000 a month. And I got to tell you, it completely transformed the company because, the customers stopped trying to find a low-cost provider, right? It's like, this thing is of value. Wound up investing in technology to actually streamline all the processes. You had an incentive now to do it faster, cheaper, because you're getting the same price for it. And they actually started creating a higher margin business It's funny. One of the things they said was the biggest differentiator was we freed up all these hours where we used to have to like chase bills, and we just don't have to do that anymore. And we can spend our time focusing on our clients, delivering value, and trying to find, these additional value-added services that they really, really value versus just the day-to-day stuff. And it was a transformational experience for them. So I've always wondered why, more professional services organizations just don't move to that model. And I hear about like retainer models and so on and so forth, right? But there just should be just so much more flexibility these days in what you can do.
Well, that's amazing coming from a Deloitte in light of their size. Do you remember in terms of timeline, like was that within the last like 40 years, post-pandemic times, or was that even before the pandemic?
Oh, that was before. That was before. It was Australia, right? So maybe more of a distinct, isolated market, a little more maybe prone to experimentation. And so it was really, really impressive work that we saw. Look, I mean, what we try to say is it's not about the billable hours, it's about the relationship, right?
Mhm.
It's about the relationship and the service. And how do you have more flexibility, think about the value of the service and how you can price for it. And so what we say when we try to talk about, well, the subscription economy, you got to contrast it with something. So we contrast it with the product economy or the
Right.
widget economy.
Mhm.
And so you get it, like there's, you visualize a factory and an assembly line, and they're just like cars or widgets or pencils or whatever's coming off the assembly line. You want to sell as many units of that as possible. And you step back and you think about, hey, if you got an MBA, what are the concepts you're being taught or how you run these, or the accounting statements? It's all around that per unit concept. And it made sense if you're selling like a physical product. But it feels like the legal industry, the professional industry said, well, we don't have units. Our units are just hours. All right. And so we're just going to sell hours. And so you're building something that should be more of a service provider mindset on top of a manufacturing widget-centric business model, which never really made sense. And you should have much more flexibility. And for inspiration, why not look at the software sector, right? The way you
Mhm.
buy Amazon or the way you buy Google or Salesforce, there's just so much variety in how you do so. And they can customize that for every single customer.
Right, but like you spoke about and I say spoke about because I listened to it on Audible,
Sure.
subscribed, the customers, the clients, they want the milk, not the cow, right?
That's right.
And so when you're saying I'm selling time, that's like saying I have a cow, but what customers want, they want the service, they want the outcome, they want the document, they want the advice, the
That's right.
analysis, right? And
That's
so
right.
that ties into that idea of milk, not the cow. You also mentioned cars. And so I'm glad you brought that up because in your book, you were quoting from Volvo CEO about how they had this new subscription offering for Volvo. And we'll do a quick post-mortem here because he said, I think by 2024, they were going to have like all subscriptions on their cars. And now, of course, last month in October, they finally sunset the program. So
Right.
what do you think? I have some ideas, but where do you think they went wrong with not being able to succeed in adapting the subscription model to the vehicular space?
Well, look, I certainly was really hopeful on Volvo, but there's a lot of other successes in the car industry. If you talk to Ford, if you talk to General Motors, right, what they would say is, look, it's not about the car. It's not allowing people pay for the car over time. I mean, we have that. It's called leases, right? It's what I really want. You talk about the milk versus the cow. Am I really looking for the car, or am I looking just to get from point A to point B?
Mhm.
Right. And I want some level of flexibility. I want some level of control. And I'm willing to pay for different types of value. And so maybe for now, like let's continue to sell the car. But gosh, I wouldn't mind paying for a different entertainment experience. I wouldn't mind being, like I want to be able to track when my teenagers driving around and where they actually are. Right. And so there's all these other capabilities that go beyond the car that you really think about. And it's part of the service of getting from point A to point B. I want quality, I want entertainment, I want safety, right? I want to be able to listen to audiobooks in the car, right? Whatever it is, there's lots of ways to think about that experience, if you will. And then you'll find all sorts of ways of monetizing that experience.
Certainly, and for the last year, we've had a Tesla in the family, and you could subscribe to a lot of things once you get
That's
a
right.
Tesla,
That's
right?
right.
So there are certainly ways to leverage the subscription model after you get the car, be it buy it, lease it. I wonder though, because we've had Robbie Kellman Baxter on the podcast, and one of the things that she talked about is having multiple business models is a surefire way that one of them isn't going to succeed. And so I wonder, by still selling, like by not burning the boats and saying in 2022, we're going to be pure subscription for Volvo. And if that was the only way you could get a Volvo, look, my mom's had a Volvo as long as I've been alive, right? She loves Volvos. They have an amazing brand affinity, right? We all know it's one of the safest cars. I think people would have gone for it if they gave a timeline. Plus, they probably also would have sold a lot of cars if they said they were going to pure subscription. They probably would have,
Yeah.
it would have been a secondhand effect that they weren't planning for. I think they would have succeeded, and I think it would have totally revolutionized how people purchase or subscribe to motor vehicles. Do you have any perspective on that?
Yeah, so you alluded to this concept earlier in the conversation about this total monetization.
Mm-hmm.
And so now that we're getting more sophisticated in subscriptions, and you pick Volvo as an example, probably on the other end of the spectrum, certainly the streaming services, right? We all know everything's going streaming. More and more people are cutting their cable, and they've got all these services out there. And what do we do, right? And this competition is intense right now. Like, do I go with Disney? Do I go with Netflix? Do I really need both? Maybe I'll sign up for Hulu for 60 days, right? Watch a couple shows and just kind of cancel it and switch around. And so it's a complex environment right now. And so what smart companies are realizing is, look, there's not a one size fits all strategy, that everybody wants something a little bit different, and everybody values it differently, and everybody wants to pay a little bit differently. And so why not, for the person that wants to buy the Volvo, let them buy the Volvo, right? Your mom probably wants to buy it, and that's okay, right? And other customers are saying, look, I'm getting introduced to the Volvo brand. I could be really loyal. I could become, right, the next customer, just like your mom. But right now, I'm still like, I want to try different, experiment different things. And why not let them grab a Volvo for 2 months or 3 months or even a week, right? Why not let them purchase it on a pay-as-you-go basis? Or the leases, right? The leases are great, but why can't I dial up the lease payments or dial down the lease payments depending on what's going on, right? Like, you have this feeling, again, it's the same thing where they assume a certain number of miles, right? But what if I don't use that many miles, right? Why do I need to get penalized for that? Nobody wants to get penalized for unused, right, the things that they purchase. And so what you find is giving customers choice, giving customers flexibility is really the way to maximize your entire potential marketplace. Otherwise, what you're going to do is you're going to exclude big parts of the marketplace, right? Like, that's not really for me. And so total monetization is an idea, is a concept that says, look, don't focus on selling a product with a unit price. Focus on monetizing this great innovation that you have, right? Monetizing the demand that you see for the innovation that you have, and be flexible. If you want to monetize the entire demand curve that you see, then you might need lots of flexibility in offering different types of ideas and different types of value propositions for your customers. And so, look, bring it back to the legal industry. There might be somebody that's just like, look, it's a new customer, and we haven't built a relationship yet. So look, let's just go on an hourly basis, or I tell you what, let's just do a fixed price. So, like, let's take the risk away. But as you get to know me, like, why don't we just go on something that's more predictable, so that, look, you don't want to count hours. I don't want to count hours, right? So let me just, you can call me at any time, and then I'll work out the mechanics of the dollars and the hours to make sure that I'm running a successful business.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought it back to that, because we've had this concept for a little over a decade, and it's been growing in the legal industry, called unbundling legal services. It used to be when you hired a lawyer, it was all in, and you pay that billable rate, and now they're your lawyer. They do everything for you, and that's all you get. But in order to address this access to justice gap, which I look at more of like a latent legal market, like how Uber tapped into this latent market of
Right.
folks who wanted to get from point A to point B,
Sure.
but there were no cabs, right? I think the same thing is true in legal, where people would pay for legal services, right? 99% of transactions happen without a lawyer in the loop. You go to some place, they make you sign the contract before you can even walk in the door, right? That's a transaction, right? So I think there's this massive latent market opportunity, but because the billable hour is the main way private practice attorneys provide services, they don't have the ability to tap in. So unbundling became an opportunity for the licensing bodies and the professional responsibility groups for lawyers to say, hey, it's okay for you to unbundle your legal services. So there have been some lawyers like myself who have gone for this unbundling concept. But you mentioned unbundling. So that now there is, folks could go to, it's Zuora.com/subscribed, and they could read all about total monetization. But one of those articles, you talk about unbundling. So you want to talk about that a little bit more as it relates to this concept of total monetization?
Well, we're all really proud of the services that we provide, right? The innovations that we provide. So sometimes we just think of it as a big monolith. And so if you look at the newspapers are often a prime example.
Hmm.
We used to, in the physical world, have to buy, say, the Sunday paper, say the New York Times. You get this big paper, you throw out half the sections and you just read the sports or you just read the arts, right? Whatever you're interested in. And so when they went digital, the New York Times realized, look, we have an opportunity to do something very, very different. And there's a connectedness to what we do, certainly, that they like to talk about sometimes in their videos, but start with whatever you like. And it turns out a lot of people like to start with puzzles. And once they realize that, they're like, well, why not this Wordle thing? It's kind of like the gateway drug, right? Let's just give them Wordle for free. But next thing you know, you're playing the spelling bee. Next thing you know, like, oh, I like basketball. I like baseball. These articles are pretty good. Okay, let's get you into the athletic. I'm trying my hand at cooking. These recipes are okay. Let's get you into a recipe. And of course, there's a digital all access pass. And of course, news, right, is a big, big part of what they do. And so before the digital world, they saw their customer base as, hey, a New Yorker, and maybe we'll get to 1 million subscribers, but this whole new way of thinking and using digital technologies to broaden their access. They've got 10 million subscribers now, probably going on 15 around the world. And so now they're thinking, hey, our potential market is anybody that speaks English. And then you can see when you play with the app that they're trying to branch out beyond that as well. Right. And so just the whole way of rethinking what you do. So think of it this way. There is a potential market for your expertise. And today, the customer set you have is probably a fraction of that potential market. There's so many other companies out there, other people, other companies that want your expertise. And then you've got your way of addressing that, which is probably limited. And so unbundling and rethinking your services to really have a better match between those two environments is really what we're trying to evangelize now. Then now that we understand everything is subscriptions and certainly certain industries are further ahead than others, how do I maximize that? What does that mean? And one of the big lessons is it's not about taking a thing, an hour, and putting a price tag on it, right? It's about understanding what demand is, understanding your innovations and finding all ways of matching it. And often unbundling your thing allows you to rethink the type of services that you do and better ways of providing it.
Right. So I'll give you an example of how I do it, and I do this a little bit. So when I read that first post on total monetization, it was just like, wow, this is almost talking about how I've adapted the subscription model, the legal services, in large part back in 2020 when I first listened to Subscribe. And that is, I still tie it back to the subscription model though. So even though I'm leveraging this idea of unbundling, I kind of take like a Costco approach, right? In order to get access to these unbundled things, these unbundled legal services, you must first subscribe. And I start low. I mean, I start at $20 a month because I'm trying to tap into that latent market, right? Like I'm not an enterprise level provider, right? I'm a true solo practice attorney. So I start at $20 a month. And then at the basic level of, we don't know what this contract is, what this document might be that you need me to draft or review, it's $50 a page. But you only get access to that unbundled per page count when you're subscribed to $20 a month. And then I have a bunch of fixed fees for things like real estate closings, prenups, things like that, right? That are, the documents are largely the same from client to client, and we just customize little bits, and it's all automated. I mean, this was even before AI. Like Gen AI hit the scene, right? They're all automation. So I'm able to charge less than $50 a page for that. But for my best clients, for my small business clients, for my family office clients that they don't want to pay per page, I have a higher monthly subscription that just, we stop counting pages and you get so many projects per month. The project could be a page, it could be 15 pages, doesn't matter. I could count on the recurring revenue and they don't have to worry about the unbundledness of, well, we're going to count pages, right?
Yeah.
So that's been my approach. And when I read that total monetization, that first post, I was like, well, this sounds like this is kind of what how I've adapted the subscription model. Other lawyers are starting to do similar things because of the podcast. Is that sort of, when you hear that, does that mesh with the idea of total monetization?
It's a beautiful example. It's a beautiful example, right? The simple chart that we sometimes show, and you might be referring to the post that had a bunch of dots, right? Is, look, here's a spectrum of customers. On one side, put customers that are light engagement, right? They need you episodically. or maybe they don't even know about you, and you're just trying to draw them in. And the
Mhm.
other side is heavy users, loyal, right? They use a lot of your services, your family offices. And then try to think about it differently and try to craft, right, offerings and ways of engagement and ways of monetizing, ways of pricing that really match. So I love your model. I love your model. Like in the technology industry, there's this concept called consumption model or usage models. That's all the rage because of, for services like AWS, it's the same thing, right? I can start off paying, by the hour, but AWS has these, Amazon has these reserved instances, right? That I can say, look, I want a reservation, and then you're paying a monthly fee for those type of things. And so having the spectrum of opportunities allows you to hold on to a customer, grow with them. Sometimes, like, look, if your family office or somebody's saying, look, I'm going through a patch where I'm not going to need as many legal services. Okay, well, let's move you to the lower plan. But knowing that, hey, there's some part of your life where you're going to need more legal services. And so letting customers flex is a key idea. And it sounds like you're doing exactly that.
Yeah, and you just nailed it. Of course you did. But there are some clients who maybe they're starting a business or they have a business, but it's a little rough. And hiring a $500 an hour plus attorney just doesn't make sense to them. It'll break the bank. Their business won't succeed. But they could subscribe for a reasonable price. Get this a la carte. I've been calling it a la carte, but I sort of like this total monetization idea, more. And and now I could even give them some access to there's been a movement in the legal industry of open source legal documents. I don't know if you've come across this yet. Like NDAs, like there's
Yeah.
bond terms, there's one NDA, there's like
Big in
these
Silicon Valley. Yeah. Big in the tech industry. Yeah.
right common paper. I mean, I know the founders of most of those companies. We've talked because I'm recommending their products to these clients so that they can I don't even have to charge them per page because here's this open source professional services agreement that you could get started with. Once you get your first few thousand in revenue, now you can come back and we could do the $50 per page, or maybe you're going now at a point where you could subscribe at a higher level. So it really aligns incentives between the service provider and the ultimate client when you're not just trying to just milk them for as many hours as you could bill.
Yeah. Look, I mean, I heard the story. I think it was Pablo Picasso, right? And I'm sure it's a made up story, but the story goes somebody was sitting with Pablo Picasso, probably some French cafe or some Spanish cafe, and he drew a little sketch, handed it over, and said, this is $500. She's like, you only spent like 2 minutes on it, and you're like, look, you're not paying for the 2 minutes, you're paying for my lifetime of expertise and learning. And look, I'm not trying to argue that we should pay a lot, but people aren't coming to you for a document. I mean, yeah, they are, but they're really coming to you because, you understand their problems. You can guide them through it. You can tell them which document to use, and you can help them see, landmines downstream that maybe they wouldn't be able to see themselves, right? Why? Because you're the expert. You're the expert. But look, if you can provide them the documents as a commodity and draw them in, ultimately, what they're going to really want is a relationship with you. You understand them, they trust you, and giving them an environment where that relationship is fluid, they can go deeper, right, is really, really what you're trying to do.
Yeah. I've heard a similar story to the Picasso one as the handyman who comes over and he charges $1,000, but he comes and he hammers one nail and it fixes the problem, right? Well, I knew to
Right.
hammer that nail, right?
Yeah,
And I know that because of 20 years of expertise and training, et cetera, right?
sure.
So something else that you mentioned in these total monetization articles is the idea of pausing. And you probably gave some VCs or some high growth tech startups a heart attack when they read that because they want to reduce churn. And a pause, like what's the difference between a pause or an unsubscribe and a resubscribe, right? Because I do let my clients unsubscribe. It might be the fact that I don't have the sophisticated technology that lets them pause the software that I'm using, and I've 43 pieces of software as part of my tech stack, right? So I'm using a
Huh?
lot of software, but it's all off the shelf stuff. It's not customized. And so I don't have the ability to pause, but I still find that when I let clients, and we'll talk about this, your most recent post about click to unsubscribe, make it easy to cancel. But maybe make it easy to pause would also be a good thing for some of these larger companies. I have boomerang clients. Even when clients are not
Of course.
subscribed to me, they still think of me as their lawyer, and I make it really easy for them to go in and reactivate their account, and I have all that automated, right?
Yeah.
And so this concept of pausing, I think, could be super beneficial to some of these other companies, but they've got, goals of reducing churn and all these other things. So how does that comport with the subscription economy when now you're letting customers pause?
Well, I mean, financial metrics are certainly important, right? But as we know, running these businesses is you can't let the financial metrics sort of hide the fundamental thing that you do, right? Which is to service your customers. And so the reality is the customers they're probably gonna churn anyway. So and so to be able to say to them, hey, look, I understand, right? These things, sometimes these relationships are episodic, right? Sometimes like, the demand for what you do goes up and down over time. I do like your idea when that happens of having, hey, look, there's some flat monthly thing, right? Like Costco does or Amazon Prime, because it gives some stability to the relationship. But if they're going to leave anyway, then why not have the ability to say, look, given everything that's going on, why don't you just pause it for 3 months or 6 months because, hey, you're probably going to want something at that point, right? Now you have to give them a reason to do that, which is, well, if you pause, then you won't lose all these things, right? In a video streaming thing, you won't lose all your history and all your preferences and all those type of things. We'll maintain that because I'm confident in what I do, and I'm confident at some point in the future that you're going to need what I do, and that's okay.
Yeah, that's a really interesting problem to try to think about solving for the services-based industry. So one of the things that I do is if I analyze or draft an agreement for somebody, for a client at the $50 a page level, I do tell them that as long as they're subscribed, whenever you ask me about that document again in the future, which you probably will, it's a one-time $50 per page payment. I don't charge you again. And so that's sort of my way to solve that problem.
Yeah,
And I'll tell you, it's about a 50-50 success rate right now with clients sticking around versus clients unsubscribing. And that's not to say like they're not happy with the service. It's just some people, they want to binge watch The Mandalorian and then unsubscribe from Disney Plus until the next
sure.
season's available. And
Yeah,
you know what? That's fine with me.
yeah. Look, I mean, you have a long tail of customers, but ultimately, you want heavy engagement in the marketplace. You want to bring new clients in, but your business is going to be the high value, right? That really drives a lot of your business, and so it's okay. It's okay to have customers in the long tail come in and come out, because your hope is one day, right, that they're going to grow into something that they see you as having supported them through that journey, and now they're a really, really loyal customer.
Yeah, I also think the idea of pausing, of letting your customers or clients pause, goes into what you were talking about in subscribed, about happy customers staying subscribed, even if it's a pause, right? Because when there's no beginning and no end, that goes into the infinite game idea. And
That's
if
right.
you're thinking more infinite game minded
Yeah.
instead of
Bobby
finite
loves
game,
talking about that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
you're like pausing is okay now because it gives you the possibility of lifetime value in the future from this
Yeah.
customer, right? Instead of just they churn, they're pissed, you made it hard to find the click to unsubscribe button, and now they're never going to come back and they're going to tell everybody what a
Yeah.
terrible experience they had, right?
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah, yeah. So you said you were just talking about the infinite game. Like, tell me more.
Well, look, I think the interesting thing about like flipping from the product to the customer, and there's one theme in the book, it's all about that, right? And so it's impossible not to talk about products because that's what we offer. And so we talk about the documents, we talk about the service, we talk about the advice. But ultimately, it's a relationship that you can deepen. So what does that mean, right? That means that if you're engaging with your customers, you're building up a knowledge, right? So based on the forms that they need, based on the advice that you're giving, you have a good sense of what they're doing in their company or their lives or whatever it happens to be. And so knowing that, you can be a lot more proactive, right? And you see this on the technology side where whether it's Amazon or Uber, they recommend stuff to you, right? They remember your most common destinations. So there's just always pops up on the first screen, just simple stuff like that. Or Netflix knows like, hey, look, chances are these are the shows that you're going to want to watch or going to like to watch. Let me promote those over other ones for you. And you just make it easier and easier and easier for your customers to engage with you. Right. And look, that is the essence of the legal industry. I'm looking for somebody with expertise that over time understands, what I'm looking for. Now, it might start off because I'm just trying to solve a problem, right? I'm just trying to find one of these NDAs or any one of these documents. But ultimately, that relationship, that knowledge, and how you deepen that knowledge is what's going to make you different. Why would I go to somebody else that doesn't understand me?
Right, right. Oh yeah, that's key. If so I'm fractional general counsel to businesses that are not large enough to have full-time in-house attorneys.
Right.
And there's a client of mine. This is a great example. So I'll bring it up without actually identifying the client, right?
Sure.
But they're in the manufacturing space, and they have some co-opetition because they both sell things D2C, but most of their business is B2B. And so one
Right.
of these other businesses will buy product wholesale from them and then compete with them online. And so I only know that because they pay me a fixed amount every month, and I've gotten to know their business over 2.5 years. Otherwise, I might not know that they
Right.
compete with their customers in some streams, right? So they came to me and they said, "Hey, this person, this entity is just like straight up copying images and copy from our website and putting it on their website. Could you send them a cease and desist, and could we prepare to take legal action against them?" And I said, "Sure. Wait, do they also buy from you?"
That's right.
And they said, "Yes, they do." And I said, "Okay, let's offer them a licensing agreement that says, hey, you could license these images and our copy from us in addition to buying the product. And hey, just so you know, our terms of service and our policy is you can't use our IP when you buy from
Right.
us, but we'll
Right.
give you that opportunity." And that's a much softer way and a
Sure.
revenue generating opportunity instead of losing that customer by sending them a scary cease and desist letter. And I only would have known that because of this ongoing relationship I have with this client as their outside counsel.
That's right. That's right. And you think about that and you bring it back to the per hour model. If you have a per hour model, because I heard that it's fractionals, so you get to go deep, if it's a per hour model and they hesitate to bring you in because there's a clock, there's a dollar clock that's going through their head, you never get a chance. You never get a chance on the edges to find out all this other information.
And if I send them a cease and desist and they don't comply, now I could take them to court and bill tons of hours. So I'm never
That's
going to
right.
come up with the licensing idea.
That's right. That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah. Well, this is great. I want to know so we did just sort of get into total monetization, which I'm happy about, but I also want to get a sense of where the evolution of that idea came from, right? So you have the book Subscribed, you're all in on the subscription economy, and here, post pandemic, post this Gen AI world that we're in, you start discussing this total monetization idea. And of course, with Zuora, you have access to all this data for customer preferences, on behalf of your customers. So like what were the steps? What were you seeing that led you to this idea?
Well, look, we go pretty deep with our customers as well. It's part of the same philosophy. After 10 years of evangelizing and trying to help companies launch successful recurring revenue businesses, what we just got a sense of is, okay, this is good. This is phase one, but now we're hitting our next wave of challenges, right? And so this is a good idea, but all of a sudden there's lots of other services. There's Netflix, but now there's Disney, there's Hulu, and there's all this other stuff, right? And this is just an example that we can all relate to. And so what do we do? And so there was a sense that, hey, we get it. We get subscriptions. You are evangelizing this new world, but that new world is now our new normal, right? There's a template for how to build a modern business that we subscribe to. And I get, there's probably lots of lawyers out there that are earlier in their journey, legal firms, and happy to kind of take them through that. But we've got a set of customers now that are saying, hey, look, we get it. We're all bought in. This is our new normal. But what do we do from here? Right. And what we're seeing is a lot of them launched their initial service, $10 a month, $100,000 a year, whatever it happens to be, whether it's just consumers or businesses. Right. And a lot of the conversations that we had started coming to, well, I want to do more. Right. So we started seeing patterns. Bundling was a pattern. Moving towards a consumption model was a pattern.
Mm-hmm.
So what we realized is, look, being customer-centric is really, really important. But long-term success in this model is having the flexibility to do the stuff that you're doing, right? Trying new things, launching new ideas, trying new plans. And as a sole practitioner, hearing that you've got like 40 pieces of technology, right? Like, how do you put all this stuff together, to make these ideas work, right? And so total monetization was saying, look, you probably, if you've been doing this, are starting to think about monetization instead of pricing. Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little bit more complex and over time and things like that. But that is going to be your new normal. You're going to be monetizing all the time because it's a fast changing environment. Your customers are constantly shifting. Competitors and alternative services might be coming in. You're going to learn more about your customers. So always be experimenting with monetization and always take a sort of a total monetization mindset that says, look, I want to ultimately maximize the demand that I'm seeing for the services that I have so I can scale my business. And total monetization is what we saw is the strategy that the best companies were really starting to do.
Yeah, and you said a word that scares a lot of lawyers, which is experiment.
Sure.
We're a profession based on precedent. Now, longtime listeners of the podcast are in that mindset, but I do think that's an important mindset to be in, where you have to be willing and able to experiment with that stuff. I'm curious to know, for some firms, like there are mid-sized firms. I don't actually know if like Big Law is leveraging Salesforce. Maybe some firms are, but I know of some mid-sized firms that have moved over to Salesforce. Would they be potential customers of Zuora if they wanted to
Oh, absolutely.
ditch the billable hour?
Absolutely.
Like what would that even look like? Because I do have some Big Law and mid-sized firm listeners. Now they're mostly associates who are sick of billing time and want to start their own practice.
Sure.
But if they maybe decide they want to stick around and be partner and create change from within, like what would be a way that they could adopt, Zuora into a law firm and use total monetization?
Yeah, if you sort of like take the lessons from other industries, right? The first thing is don't think of it as a binary thing, right? You don't have to ditch the hours, right? That is going to be a core part of the business, but you want to complement it with other possibilities, right? And then the second thing is in today's world, there are digital technologies that can really help. And so I would start with saying, look, we obviously have a website. How can we create a client login? And you might say, well, what's the client going to do when they log in? Well, I'm sure there's all sorts of stuff they would love to be able to do, right? Like you said, they want to look at past documents and they want to look at, there's probably a place to dialogue and, maybe everything's there under attorney-client privilege. Maybe, maybe that's a benefit, right, that you can have. But what is a way that you can engage with clients on a digital basis, and simple things like maybe looking at the last few invoices and so on and so forth. But then now you can start adding to it, right? You got the digital login portal, you have all these things. What other things can we offer as a service? And then you can start unbundling and bundling. You can say, well, look, all these things I do for you, let's just put it as part of that service. So we can do it as we do today. But if you would prefer, like $5,000 a month, like you said, like I don't want to count pages, right? Let's just move to that. So, but once you have that login, you can engage with them. You can put like things there. You can offer services. That's a place where you access the documents. But now all of a sudden there's a digital engagement with the customer that you can take into all these different places. And why do I advocate the digital? Because then you've got flexibility. It's not like a partner drawing up a proposal, right? And then getting it signed and then now it's got to go to the invoicing department, right? Just set it up where like, look, it's just a recurring service and get rid of the whole, like, what I described about Deloitte, right? Having every quarter, every month, having to chase unpaid bills, right? It's just part of an ongoing service.
Right, right. And if they wanted to in the platform, they could let their client say, if they've productized like an asset purchase agreement, for
That's
example,
right.
that they can go in and they could just check out in a cart and buy that asset purchase agreement. And then the lawyer knows to run the automation or to start drafting.
That's right. That's right.
And
And eventually maybe use AI to do it. But the key thing is that, you know, the assigned lawyer on the account, the assigned partner knows these things are going on, right? And so they can see, okay, they're asking all these type of questions. They can start spotting. They can call the client and say, hey, I notice you're doing these three things. Hey, what's going on? I'm not going to charge you for this call, obviously, right? Because I know what my other clients are doing. I know what the industry trends are. So let's talk about something that, and the customer's like, oh wow, like I wasn't even on my radar. I didn't even think to approach you for that. And now you're being proactive and channeling your expertise into benefits for the customer.
well, another thing that I do, and I've seen some other lawyers leveraging the model do, are subscription add-ons, right? So sort of like, okay, I'm an Amazon Prime member, but if I know this was a little controversial, if I don't want ads in Prime Video, like there's an extra subscription, right? If I want, unlimited music to Amazon Music, there's a subscription add-on, right? So like, and I'm a recent subscriber of One Medical, right? So like that's a
Right.
subscription add-on to my Prime membership. Of course, I think they let you do it outside of Prime, but if I wanted to give my clients, say, maybe they were paying me, $500 a month, but for every transaction, once the letter of intent goes out, it's $1,000 or $2,000 a month during the pendency of that transaction. Like they could they could opt into a subscription add-on through platform as well that could have like a set term or something
Yeah.
that where it goes off.
Look, I mean, what happens is once you get the juices flowing, there's all sorts of ideas, right? I mean, look, I call this a good problem to have, right? If you start having like, okay, I'm flooding my customer base with too many options, you can always pull back, right? You'll have a good sense of that, but don't in the early stages, let the ideas flow, try it out, right? Find some customers who, talk to your customers, say, hey, would you prefer that? Would you? Because this is all about the customer. This is
Right.
all about the customer and give them a set of choices. Yes, you're managing a business and you're going to want to optimize the right balance for your business as well, right? But that's a give and take, right? For a little bit of more loyalty, I'll give you a discount. It gives me stability in my business, and it also allows me ultimately to go deeper with you.
Yeah, with the time we have left before we wrap up, I do want to talk about it's a little less related specific to the legal profession, but it's a fascinating concept from Subscribed where you talk about what if school never ended?
Right.
Like we give ourselves this fiction of and I'll to be frank, I kind of forgot I heard that first in the book, and I've talked to people about that for years. And when I went back and listened to Subscribe to prepare to have you on the show, I was like, oh gosh, that's where I heard it from. Of course, I'm a big fan of that idea. And while I'm not, I'm lukewarm on blockchain and crypto and NFTs. I almost feel like there's your credentialing. Like it's not the sexy use of like that technology. But if you could credential, well, they've been subscribed to the Harvard subscription, MOOC related thing for, 10 years and they've hit these thresholds. Like that could be like a way to verify, the
Yeah.
education. But where did that idea come from? And I think it's a great idea. And also why haven't we seen institutions do it? I wanna shout it from the mountaintops.
Well, look, I mean, the key lesson in the book is switching from a product mindset to a customer mindset. And there's just so much once you start paying attention to it that we're taught to focus on the product and selling the product. And when you focus on the customers, you have this expertise, right? Education, knowledge, training, however you want to think about it. And you have a potential marketplace out there. I mean, who takes on a customer and then fires them after 4 years? I mean, nobody does that, right? So why is that? And then you say, okay, of course, it's not exactly like that because then these firms have alumni networks. They try to go back and sell executive education, right? Some of them do, and some of them do definitely just forget about it, right? It's just alumni and they just see it as a potential donor pool. But like, why do that, right? Like, it's so weird. Like, everyone has a loyalty to their school. They come back for homecoming. They cheer on the sports teams. And so one of the lessons is if you have a brand that's valuable and you're becoming a part of a group of people's identity, that's a subscription. Now, whether you're monetizing it or not, like who knows, right? But why not find out like what do your alumni want? They've got to have challenges in their day-to-day lives that your expertise provides. They like your brand. They've gone through 4 years or 2 years, whatever it is, that they understand the expertise. Why wouldn't you just continue to let them use it? And so I don't know what it is, right? It requires some entrepreneurs to figure it out, but why isn't it, $2,000 a year and you get to continue your education, take an online class? Why not just continue it?
Yeah.
And then measure the engagement, reach out to them, see what the churn is like and see, hey, can we hold on to these folks for 10 years, 20 years, 5 years? How do we continue to stretch it? How do we be part of their lives? How do we now carry over to their kids' lives? Maybe we can start educating their kids. But I've got an expertise that the world needs. Why do I limit myself to just this set of customers over 4 years?
Yeah, and with the content creator economy and folks having courses that they're teaching
Okay.
through these platforms, like the technology is there to do it. And there's clearly customer interest, like consumer interest in doing something like that. Folks are paying a certain amount a month, to learn how to start a YouTube channel or to learn something about the economy. And there's just random people on the internet.
That's right. I mean, a lot of this is the technology. As you can imagine 30, 40 years ago, that you didn't have access to people, right? It wasn't, but now it's so easy. It's so easy to keep a common thread. It's so easy to create a digital relationship. It's so easy to create a login. And so hold on to your customers, hold on
Yeah.
to your relationships and find, they need what you do and get them to continue to use what you do and find all sorts of ways to monetize it.
Yeah, so great course creators are the professors of the future,
That's right.
maybe, or we have to teach professors how to do that kind of a thing. I think I have an almost 4-year-old, so we're thinking about saving for college, but what is that even going to look like? You know, however many 14 years from now.
That's right.
And I would love to see something like this because there's a bubble. It's about to burst or it's burst with the student loan debt problem that we have in our economy and folks who are. I mean, I can tell you a lot of lawyers like it's a bimodal distribution curve when you graduate from law school, right? You have some lawyers making 180 plus graduating, but that's like fewer than 10% of graduating law students, and the average income is like 100, 110, but you have very few lawyers actually making that. You're making most attorneys in their first year are making between 40 to 70K coming out of law school in their first year. And you're thinking, why am I investing, close to 100,000 maybe in undergrad, 150 plus in law school? Like if I could pay for that over time, I have to do continuing legal education anyway, like to maintain my license. I think you could have more people that don't go into debt. You could certainly have more lawyers, which I think we need more of, right? There's like one to, for private practice attorneys, like there's like 1 to 400 for the US, if it's even that close. So I think it's a fantastic idea. That's why I had to bring
So
it up. I want to promote it.
that's exactly the same story as Adobe, where Adobe used to charge. Now, the scale's different, the details are different, but Adobe used to charge a few $1,000s for their creative suite. The only people that can afford it are photography professionals, right? Photographers and designers and so on and so forth that they're building a business out of it. And huge parts of the marketplace they're not able to address. And so, oh, by the way, every year they were selling less and less units. They made it up through price increases, but they're selling less and less units. And they said, look, what we do, our expertise, manipulation of images and videos, that's exploding, right? Just look at the phones. Everybody's manipulating their. So, like, why are we doing that? Why are we like boxing out entire parts of the marketplace? If we move to a subscription model, right? We can always make sure they're on the latest releases, the latest innovations, because we want our innovations out there being used as much as possible. We can lower the cost of entry, and we can rapidly expand the marketplace, and that's exactly what happened. And so, having sort of this fixed business model, we have the capability of transforming our business models to be much more customer centric, much more agile, right? And really think about it as with total monetization, you could probably be generating more revenue, a higher margin, with more customers, having more impact in your marketplace, letting your expertise right out there in a broader part of the marketplace.
I'm so glad you brought up Adobe because I did actually have that on my list of things to talk about with you. In particular, because they did burn the boats. Like they did not continue to offer the product when they switched over to subscription. Right?
Yeah.
That was a decision they made. So I know with physical goods it's different than software. So, but I thought like Volvo had taken a page out of Adobe's book and said no more one-time purchases. We're just doing subscription. Maybe they'd see the success of Adobe. I don't know, but I think it's an incredible story. And yeah, I actually know somebody who works for Adobe. I'm going to send them this episode. I'm going to make sure they get this episode because they should be using total monetization, right? Like I'm a subscriber. I pay for Adobe Acrobat Pro, like e-signatures, PDF editors. I'm a law firm, right? I have to. What if I just needed one e-signature? Like, should I be able to pay for that? Right? Or should maybe I pay $10 a month instead of 20, but every time I do an e-signature, I have to pay a certain amount or my client
Well, I
will pay
mean,
that
so the
amount?
consumption model allows you to break the whole. We have a monthly that says, look, tell you what, prepay for 50 e-signatures. You have 6 months to use it. And so after 6 months, if you don't use it, look, we can talk, right? Maybe we'll let you like roll it over, right? By topping it up so you don't lose it. I mean, there's, like you see the airlines doing it. You see so many other industries doing it. There's much more. There's an infinite number of possibilities, and we tend to get stuck in traditional way of thinking about it.
Right. The Starbucks model, which I was in another one of your
Starbucks model.
posts, right? Maybe I just want to give Adobe this pot of money that they could do with whatever they want, but
Yep.
every time I do an e-signature, it comes out of that pot, right?
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, quite an idea. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show, Tien. And there's one question I like to ask all my guests. And to be fair, I didn't prep your team for it, but it's a fun one. And that is a hot dog a sandwich and why?
Is a hot dog a sandwich? A hot dog is definitely not a sandwich. Just because there's bread, I mean, it's not as you don't. A sandwich, you sandwich it. A hot dog, it's a bun. The bun is more of a holder. I mean, look, I'm a New Yorker. I'm here in New York. Hot dog stands everywhere, and there's no one that's going to call a hot dog a sandwich. So
Okay, all right. We don't grade the answers. We just like to ask it because it's a fun
I
question.
would claim a burger is not a sandwich. A sandwich is two slices of bread with like sliced meat, peanut butter. But just because there's an existence of a bun, it's not a sandwich.
There are some rabbit holes you could go down with this one. Believe me, I've got compilation episodes that are some of the most downloaded episodes of just people's answer to this question. Um,
How do
it's
you
a fun.
monetize? How do you monetize that hot dog?
Well, you want to maximize those subscriber benefits because you could just get all the toppings on top because there's
That's
usually
right.
just one price, right? Love it. If people wanted to learn more about Zuora, about total monetization, what's the best place for them to go? Where could they learn more?
Well, look, subscribe is the best place. You can go to www.subscribe.com. You can go to, which just points you to www.zora.com/subscribed. And look, we took the book. We had so much feedback on the book. And one of the comments I get is, why are you selling the book as a physical product, as a one-time thing? Shouldn't it be a subscription? So we said, well, look, that's a good point. The book industry doesn't work like that. So, but look, we can continue the journey. We can continue the dialogue. And so we turned the book into a weekly newsletter. One day we might take the last few years of newsletters and turn that into, another book, but want to continue the journey. And then we do that on subscribe.com. So we have articles coming out every week or two and really pointing to where this whole subscribing is going. And yeah. Hey, I got a question for you. If you take a pizza and you fold it in half, is that a sandwich?
Uh,
Definitely not a sandwich.
I've answered this question before, and I'll say that I'm in the firm camp of hot dog is an open-faced sandwich. And so by extension, yes, a calzone, as you were kind of describing, is a sandwich because a pizza is just another open-faced sandwich, right?
You would call a calzone a sandwich. You have a
Absolutely.
really broad definition of what a
Yeah,
sandwich is.
I had a guest on here, Megan Ma, out of Codex from Stanford, and
Yeah.
she actually, like, part of her PhD was this idea of language, and I can't remember
Yeah.
exactly what it was, but it was something like if you look at a thing based on its parts, or if you look at a thing based on how many elements it could be reduced to, and since one is like infinitely, like you could just keep reducing it to its atoms and its quarks and
Right.
it's all made up, that we got to draw a line somewhere. So she was in the firm camp of hot dog not a sandwich, I think, and that was
Got
the
it.
most convincing argument I heard. Of course,
You
leave
got
it
to
up
draw a
to.
line somewhere. That's right. A macaroon. A macaroon's not a sandwich. Come on. Anything
I,
that's like, yeah.
that's true. I would say a macaroon is not a sandwich, but it's delicious. Formally for the show, let's sign off. I'll just thank you one more time. Teen Joe, thanks again for coming on the show.
Thanks, Matthew. It was fun.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for tuning in. Make someone's day by sharing this episode with them. The best way to get in touch is to follow and message me on LinkedIn. To get extra content, subscribe to the newsletter at www.lawsubscribe.com, where you can also become a paid subscriber to get episodes and content early. Until next time, this is Matthew Kurbis with Law Subscribed.